Hello and welcome to Soul Food and Fuel for Your Life. I'm your host, Master Healer Kenton David Bell. Good to be with you here today. We have so much going on during these times on planet Earth and all kinds of changes happening to our species, humanity. We're being challenged in ways that we've never been challenged before. We're watching old systems crumble and kind of turn to ash, and new systems starting to come up out of those ashes. We are a very resilient species, much more so than we appear to be often. One of the things I'm noticing much at this time is if we're not letting go of the old ways of being, we're getting caught in the undertow, and I'm not trying to make this political at all, but when we watch the GOP, they just keep kind of hammering the same message and doubling down, and you can see that they keep kind of losing ground, not gaining any ground. And once again, I'm not a political person much anymore. But when you look at that, what they're doing and the results they're getting, they're terrible. And I think that there's a lot of ways that humanity has learned to be. I think that there's a lot of even social rules and social norms that really need to be re-examined at this time. And what is really working for humanity and what isn't? I know for myself, in my own case, when I really follow the inner guidance within myself and own the space, my own space with my energy, things really go well. If I'm not clear in that way of like what's me and what isn't me, I have a tendency to kind of absorb those outside energies. I think everybody does. And often in the absorbing of the energies that we are, a lot of these are under the radar. We're not really allowed to talk about it in truthful ways for so many reasons. How we've looked at things in the past, even 20, 30 years ago, really is not relevant anymore. For instance, one of the examples I use is with psychology, and psychology in itself there's nothing wrong with it really. It helps people kind of get a sense of who they are. But also in certain aspects and mindsets within the psychological mind or person, there is also a weakness in there that in my opinion, there's a lot of mental constructs that prevent a deeper spiritual aspect from coming through. Another way to talk about this is in our imprinting. So we're born into this world. And remember, I'm coming from a place that we are first and foremost source energy. So we're born into this world as part of source, this greater intelligence that not only designed all of this, but designed all of us as well. So it's this intelligence that's coming in. And then we have our egoic intelligence, which is very different than the intelligence in which we, our true nature, our non-localized consciousness, which is, in my opinion, and people who do work like this, that is more real than the part of you that comes in and has the experience of the human life only. You see, when you're looking out at the world and in the mindset that is something separate from you, that you have a tendency to give your power up to things outside of you. When we are in our alignment more with our source and our soul, our spirit, authentic self, whatever you want to call it, that part of us knows that it's part of something greater and that it has access to energies that actually are incredibly creative to the point that they create worlds that we live in. So when you switch your mindset over from one that's looking outside of you for your opportunities, for your power, for your resources, for your nurturing, for your for everything really. And if we bring that back to ourselves, that basic fundamental mindset that we are source. We are the ones creating the program that we're living in. We are the creators, the co-creators of this experience we're having. Then things really begin to change and we're able to evolve and, we could even say ascend in that way as well. But when we are bound by old mindsets and beliefs, it's impossible to move forward. So we really have to look at what we believe and how it is serving or not serving us. I consider myself to be very, very psychic. I don't call myself a psychic because what I do is much more than that. But I am very psychic. I think most people are psychic, really. But I also believe that a lot of these abilities have been kind of atrophied over time because we've put too much emphasis on the what is outside of us. I've heard it called the what-ism. It's a case of what-itis. So we're looking at and going, look at that thing I see, and maybe we're complaining, we have grievances about it, and as long as we're looking at and complaining about it, we're locking it in to our reality, you see. So the moment that we start locking in, okay, this is me, that's you, this is me doing this is you responding to that in a way I appreciate or a way I don't appreciate, that then locks that in as well. But we come from a place that we create it all. We start to realize that we have the ability to shift how we're looking at things. We have the ability to shift our reality in real time by how we choose to look at things and how we feel about what we're looking at, you see. There is this great I am exercise, and I believe it's also referred to as the Moses Code, which is kind of funny. I have a very strong connection to Moses. But the Moses Code, it is the I am that I am. And it's a very powerful practice. It is said that the greatest statement a human being can make is, I am that, I am. And what does this mean? It's the comma in there is I am that, whatever you're looking at, for instance. So you might want to start the exercise like this. I am looking at a lamp in my office here. And I look at that. I am that, I am. I am that lamp. I have helped create that lamp is what we are saying in that moment. So it's said back in the time of Moses that God revealed his name to Moses. And that name was I am. I am that I am. So he's saying that to Moses, basically. I am you. Once again, more confirmation, we're made in the eyes of the Creator. We are Source. So I think it's time that we started to behave more like Source as well. So if you begin to look at the mindset from a higher perspective of what's serving, what isn't, you can see that there's a certain, I would call it a particular mentalization in the Western world where we put a greater emphasis on kind of a textbook intelligence is what I'd call it. Like, a lot of stuff, you're smart, you went to, a highly rated university, you have a great degree, you have a job that, showcases, puts a spotlight on your intelligence. You see, and we put a lot of emphasis on that. And there's nothing wrong with that, I would say. That's great. I have a lot of friends who are super smarty pants like that. I don't consider myself that intelligent that way. I have intelligence in other ways, and I think that there's a balancing of that with our innate God nature. or innate greater intelligence nature. Okay. We can look at it from a Judeo-Christian standpoint, which I think is very limited these days. And that would be kind of God. God is, we're using the word God there. A little more New Agey is kind of source or universe. And I think of it as a universal current often. That is a loving, intelligent presence that's in my life that I work with on a consistent basis. So it's like when I'm thinking with source, it's almost like you're threading this higher mind consciousness into your day-to-day thinking. So you notice like when you're just thinking throughout the day, that's usually probably your egoic mind thinking and spinning out egoic intelligence ideas. Once again, nothing wrong with that. We're all here to have that experience. But if we want to see ourselves become more empowered and begin to help create this world that we're creating, a world that works for many instead of just a few, which it's been, well, then we need to own that creative birthright that is innately ours. I see that in our culture, there's a lot of weakness right now because of we're so distracted that we forgot about our innate power to create our reality. There's so many distractions, so many upheavals right now that it's very easy to get lost, and the frequencies are changing as well. But the one thing that can help us navigate through this time of incredible evolution and change on the planet is if we get in touch, really get in touch with that greater aspect of self, which is our source, the ability to create worlds with our thoughts and emotions, co-creating with our source. And I think everybody who's listening to this knows how shaky our economic system looks. And, it's been said for a long time that we are coming to a point where there's probably going to be a big monetary crash. As a matter of fact, it's very interesting working with my guidance and spirit. They're telling me that money really is almost nothing now. We still see it as a currency exchange of energy and such, but the fiat dollar is really over. We just haven't quite smelled the coffee around it yet. But that is becoming truly obsolete in these changes that we're going through. The good news is that there's going to be more of a greater abundance for everybody, really. But we might experience a little bit of turbulence for a few decades till that balances out a little bit more. Hopefully not too much. And this is also a great time for entrepreneur types, for creative types. If there's a project you've wanted to do for a long time, and when energies are like this, it's one of the best times to launch projects, start new businesses, really go for it. And especially when you're working well with your source, that you have the resources to really create anything. A lot of it takes that endurance of vision and perseverance, but also that lighthearted approach that you have the connection with source and you're working with power versus force, using real power. And that's your connection to source. Really anything is possible right now. And it's a great place to focus as opposed to focusing on those things that are burning down around us all. We're going to start noticing shifts in relationships too. The things that bound people together are changing. Soul contracts are coming up for review and completion, left, right, and center. And that when you start to feel, oh, you know what? I feel my life moving this way. And, maybe some old family members aren't going along, or friends. And it's okay to let people go right now. Don't try to figure it all out. It's okay to let people go and gravitate to the people who are your tribe, more or less. The people who make you feel inspired, uplifting, as opposed to people who bring you down. It's not really time, I personally believe, for a lot of sitting in the old muck. We're moving quickly now, moving forward very quickly. So it's more about keeping up with the current energies and I think leaning into it. I notice when I lean into things as opposed to getting frustrated or feeling overwhelmed, that I almost always, like 99.9% of the time, feel empowered in that leaning into it. And it's my belief we have all the resources in front of us every moment that we need to navigate through this maze of life and, previously unexperienced energies that the whole planet is beginning to feel. I'm also going to talk about, for a few minutes here, some of the work I'm doing that I'm finding extremely helpful. I've gone through a huge transformation in the last 18 months, I would say. And a lot of it, I was almost, I would say, held down at times. Like I couldn't move at times for good portions of the day where I would be, I'm going to say, worked on. And I've had a lot of very strong metaphysical experiences through my life. And this one was by far the most extreme and still is. And with it has come incredible amounts of new vital life force. I'm 60 years old and I've, as your body ages, you get the aches and pains and such. And I would say the majority, like 80, 85, even 90% of things that have been ailing me have fallen away pretty much. And, knees, joints, stuff like that, energy levels. It's amazing what happens and what tools, if we use the right tools, how we can kind of reset our systems. And I'm noticing my clients are having a lot of results like this as well. And there's a process I lead people through. And it's different for each one. Each person's a little different. So it happens a little more quickly. It takes a little more time. But it really is a reset in how we access our energies, doing away with like old karmic systems, all the past life stuff's falling away. And we're finding ourselves getting very present and retrieving a lot of energies that had been even caught up in past lives, coming back to the self, back to the what's referred to as the core star, which is an aspect in our multidimensional field that really gives us a lot of fortitude, strength, clarity as we move forward. So for those of you who are struggling out there, know that there are ways forward. You don't have to work with me. There's a lot of other people out there or things you could study that will help you as well. But look for what's new. There's certain old things that are really good too, I think. I think some old, like Chinese medicine, acupuncture is great. Qigong, Tai Chi, yoga, these are great things for this day and age right now. A lot of people are having Kundalini experiences happening. My work is all based on my Kundalini awakening that's been kind of pouring through me for the last 25 plus years now. And Kundalini is a powerful, powerful energy of transformation. And it's also an energy, though, that can knock you out of the mainstream. So if you're kind of an entrepreneur type, or you're really focused on your career and making money, Kundalini might not be the right energy for you because it's so strong in certain cases, you won't be able to really function at times in what we call the 3D world. But I also think some of that is changing in the sense that the frequencies as they come up and as we create new systems, those with Kundalini energy like myself will match the new systems much better than the old systems. Like I noticed that I have a real hard time these days when I go into a busy third dimensional space, whether it be like a mall, a certain large supermarkets, airports. And I noticed that it feels very trying to me and very slow and arduous, the way people move through it. All those systems that we check, cross-check, all of this, and all those guardrails that we keep on society, those things are getting stretched and knocked down and dissolved right now. And it's not because they're bad, it's just because we've outgrown them. With the Ten Commandments that Moses brought to humanity, those all probably need to be updated at this time. One of the things that I see that's coming through is we're going to need to own more of our true nature and take responsibility in that way. In the end, we're all responsible for ourselves anyhow. So by passing the buck or not taking responsibility, and I don't mean in a third dimensional way, I'm talking about on a spiritual soul level, taking responsibility for the expression of your soul. Here's something I'll share about something that's been coming up in my journey just this last week that I've been focused on. So my soul is really deeply, absolutely about giving. My soul wants to give, give, give. And I've seen examples of my soul begging for this over and over and over again in my life. At the same time, I'm also here to learn how to put myself first in a very healthy, kind of self-centered way, in a selfish way. I tend to not do that. I tend to not define my boundaries. A lot of it has to do with the way I was raised, traumas I had incurred as a child. And so I had to work extra diligently to kind of shore up my own energy in that way. So it's kind of, there's these paradoxes usually in our soul's pathway here on the planet, which usually has nothing to do, by the way, with how we show up for life and work. That's more of our imprinting, you see, that we're told how to behave, how to act. This is society, how it works. You have to obey society to a certain extent, or else you get in trouble. We lock you up, or you're an outcast, ostracized, and so on and so forth. So what's going on now is a lot of these things are up for examination. Like, what's really right? What isn't? What morals are right? What morals are wrong? And not just for us as individuals, but collectively. So there's so much of this coming up because the old is falling away. And one of the things that really has to come in is that we take responsibility for our own expression of our soul and spirit, that deeper part of us. When we start living by this standard rather than imprinting, what begins to happen, I see for every client that I've worked with that steps into the space, is all the resources, all the information that they possibly need is in front of them. I've seen people like they'll quit their jobs and I'm going to do this because this is what I'm tired of the old and we're going to do the new. And maybe they don't know where their next paycheck is going to come from. Maybe they're living from, month to month, which most people are these days. Well, I've always seen those people who take that leap of faith and trust in the process and really engage it. They're always, always, always taken care of. I mean, we could say they're taken care of, but really what it is, I believe, it's their greater self. It's their non-localized consciousness that's out there in the world working to create this reality for them. And I've seen it every time. And at the same time, too, conversely, I see individuals who, let's say they're following it for a while, and then all of a sudden they get caught up in the illusion. They forget that they're the creator, and they maybe get hooked into something, perhaps something that their soul is still learning, you see. And they come out of that vibrational alignment where they're creating powerfully and magnificently. And then the kind of the pipeline of the creation starts to close. and things get tight and abundance dries up and they start getting in scarcity mindset, and that just spirals downward then. So you see, I've seen this over and over and over and over again. Mostly the first, not the latter. The latter I see not too often. But it happens to everybody. So in this work, what we do here is helping the individual align like that. We help them recoup power, their own physical vitality, clarity, in their alignment to create powerfully what they came here to create, which is their soul's song, really, singing their soul song out into the world, their soul's expression, whatever that might be. Whether you're a famous rock musician or an accountant or a janitor or a salesperson or a CEO, it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. One of the things I've seen a lot of great results with is working with our DNA. It's my belief that our DNA is opening up in bigger, better ways. And what I mean by that is actually when anybody, whether it's in the science kind of mainstream community for the most part, or even in the metaphysical, until recently, most people talked about DNA in a very static manner and not in a more vibrant, vibratory, dynamic state that I'm seeing it in more and more. So we have what we call our physical DNA. That's what the science does, and they've decoded the genome for the most part, and they're learning a lot more. They're even learning now that DNA is something that can store massive amounts of information. We're seeing actually ones and zeros in the DNA now. So there's even been experiments where they download the binary code into DNA. I think it was like War and Peace or some great tome like that, and it held like 100,000 copies or something like that in a little piece of DNA. So our DNA is much more than we think it is. And I've been working with I call it the spiritual or cosmic DNA, which is the non-physical DNA. And I see it as a conduit circuitry, in a sense, between source and our non-physical, and then through the ethereal bodies in the field coming down into density as it manifests into physical DNA that the science knows about. But I see it start way above with source, and it becomes more and more dense into a program that we are living here now. So we're going to do in a few moments a meditation to introduce you to it. But I've been getting just incredible results for myself with this, and doing it with the clients who are having. It's phenomenal. It truly is phenomenal. And these are high-powered individuals who maybe have, feeling a little tired at times or burnout, and like everybody gets burned out in this world right now. It's kind of takes a lot out of individuals. It takes a lot less if we're adjusted to the right energy. So that's what this practice is about. The other thing I want to stress, and we're not going to do it in this, maybe we'll do a little bit in this meditation, but the first part is, and I'm saying first part because this is the first time I'm offering this meditation on my podcast. And so this is kind of an introduction to the DNA. All right, I'm Kenton David Bell, and we are going to go into the meditation here. So here we are, DNA Phase 1 meditation, introduction to your own DNA. So find a comfortable place. I'd recommend either laying down flat or probably preferably sitting upright in a chair, back straight up, with feet on the floor. And just sit there and relax, take a deep breath in. Here I am breathing love, light, and peace into my being, exhaling, Any stress, tension of the day. Inhaling, I'm inhaling and connecting to my heart. Exhaling any tension, stress that you might be holding. Inhaling deeply and gently deep into the belly. Inhaling your connection to your source. Breath is life. And exhaling any tension, stress, any thoughts that are keeping you from being more aligned to you and your source. Now with the eyes closed, you might notice your point of attention is right behind the eyeballs. Take this point of attention and drop it into your heart space. And as you drop into your heart space, notice that your heart space has an environment. People will see perhaps a tropical beach they're sitting on, or maybe it's a couch in your living room, or perhaps it's a beautiful place out in nature on top of a mountain, babbling brook next to you, or maybe sitting up here in Bell Rock on the red rocks of Sedona. Or perhaps it's the cosmos themselves, seeing yourself sitting in a lotus position, watching the stars, galaxies, and nebulas float by. Allow yourself to use your imagination and create that however it wants to be created today. And as you create this space, I want you to then create what we call a mock-up of your DNA in front of you. Many people will use the double helix that we see in computer-generated images, which is fine. You know, it can look like anything. As I tell people, it can look like an Oreo cookie or an old Studebaker car. There's really no right or wrong how the DNA wants to be represented inside of you today. As a matter of fact, how it shows up might be a clue to how your state of mind or consciousness might be as well. So it really doesn't matter. Just let it show up and know that this is part of you, the DNA that you're beginning to observe within yourself. And by doing this, it actually helps us literally, absolutely tune into our own DNA. And our DNA is affected by higher consciousness as well as lower consciousness. And when we affect it with the intention of affecting it in a positive, empowering way for us, with higher consciousness, higher mind, we begin to feel those results in our physicality, in our mind, in our spiritual intelligence, I would say, in our spiritual beingness. So just looking at the DNA and knowing that this is you, and go into a sort of communion with it. I want you to imagine that you're telepathically communicating with it in a sense. Not necessarily with words, but as if you're exchanging data back and forth with you and your awareness, your consciousness, and your DNA. Just kind of going back and forth and watching it and feeling it respond to your thoughts, your intention. Don't try to dominate it. And don't be submissive to it either. Think of it as equal. This is you working with an aspect of you, a very fundamental, important aspect of you. And see what you notice as you are beginning to interface with your DNA. See what you notice. And don't try to push anything, just create the relationship right now. It's important to create that relationship. It's important to do this a number of times before one attempts to do anything more than that. Really create this foundational new relationship of self with self. So this is also where we'll learn to help program ourselves as well for betterment, for more creativity, for evolution of the species, for self-realization, for enlightenment, God realization. There's a lot here for us as humans in our evolutionary track towards the fourth, fifth dimensional spaces that we are moving into. And the more that we interface with it this way, the easier it actually goes. It's amazing. I've found so much more energy I've captured by doing these simple exercises. So continue on, just interfacing. I recommend not doing it for more than 10 minutes at a time. 10 minutes is probably almost too much as you're beginning. The ego will like to get in there and hijack. That's why I say that. So do it just for a little bit where you feel the true connection and the higher self, calling in your higher self. I call on my higher self to interface with my DNA. I call on my soul's wisdom to interface with my DNA. I call upon God, Source, Universe, Energy to help guide me, help me create this new relationship with this aspect of myself. And so it is. I'm Kenton David Bell. This has been Soul Food and Fuel for Your Life. And if you're interested in working with me individually or groups, give me a call, 928-274-2026, or email kentondavidbell@gmail.com. It's been a pleasure with you here today. Have a wonderful day.